Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we're taking a look at what is likely going to be the most popular of Intel's 10th generation H series processors, the Core i7-10750H. This 6-core processor is the successor to the very popular Core i7-8750H and Core i7-9750H. It's almost the universal choice for gaming laptops in the $1,000 to $1,800 range, and often takes a lead in productivity-focused 15-inch ultra-portables as well. This isn't the only Core i7 processor in Intel's new Comet Lake lineup. There's a few other options, including the new 8-core Core i7-10875H that I reviewed a few weeks ago. But judging by previous generations, anything above the 10750H will typically be restricted to premium options, while the Core i5s you see here, which amazingly are still quad cores, are destined for the most basic entry-level designs. When going into this review, there was one main question on my mind, and I'm sure it's on your mind as well. Is the Core i7-10750H actually any better than the 9750H and 8750H that came before it? After all, these three processors all use a Skylake derivative architecture, are built using Intel's 14nm technology, and all pack 6 cores within a default 45-watt power envelope. Without any major enhancements to the underlying technology, can the third iteration of this processor actually offer anything new? Well, that's what we'll be finding out today with a comprehensive comparison of the 10750H to the 9750H and 8750H, along with a look at how it stacks up to AMD's main competitor in this price range, the beefy 8-core Ryzen 7 4800H. This video will be focused on productivity performance, and then we'll tackle gaming in a separate video in a few days because there's a few interesting things going on with this latest generation of GPUs as well. Let's briefly return to the specification chart to have a look at the Core i7-10750H and what we are getting. The basic specs are 6 cores and 12 threads, a 45-watt default TDP, and 12 megabytes of level 3 cache, so no changes here compared to the last two generations. What has increased is memory support, now up to DDR4 2933, as well as clock speeds. The base clock isn't different, 2.6 GHz like the previous generation. However, boost clocks have increased. We're looking at a 5.0 GHz single-core turbo with thermal velocity boost, meaning we'll hit that frequency when the processor is running at below 65 degrees Celsius. At high temperatures, which most laptops run at, that frequency will drop by 200 MHz to sit at a 4.8 GHz turbo. However, still a 7% increase on the 4.5 GHz turbo that the Core i7-9750H provided. All core turbos have also increased, now at 4.3 GHz, up from 4 GHz. However, again, I believe this is influenced to some degree by thermal velocity boost. In practice, I saw all core turbos around the 4.1 to 4.2 GHz mark on most occasions, and sustained frequencies are naturally much lower than this. Don't expect your 10750H CPU to just sit at 4.3 GHz on all cores all the time. The test system for today's video is the MSI GS66 Stealth, which in my unit packs the Core i7-10750H along with an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060 discrete GPU configured at 80 watts. There's also 16 gigabytes of dual-channel DDR4 2666 by default. I'm not sure why MSI is shipping this laptop with DDR4 2666, given the CPU supports up to DDR4 2933, so we swap this out for 2933 speeds. There's also a 512GB SSD in here and a 1080p 240Hz display, which is pretty nice. I am a huge fan of the GS Stealth designs from MSI. I think they look great, and this is no exception. This isn't a full review of this laptop or anything, but with a very nice chassis, great display, huge 99.9 watt-hour battery, and generally a very decent keyboard, this is still one of my favorite ultra portables from a design and functionality standpoint. In terms of performance and power limits, we're not exactly getting the fastest capabilities here, given the slim and light design. The CPU can easily run at the default 45 watt limit, but tops out around 53 watts maximum with the turbo modes. I've seen some thicker designs do up to 70 watts or more. The CPU only topping out at 53 watts in the cooler boost mode is basically irrelevant though for our testing, as we run all CPUs using stock settings. So in this case, for the Core i7-10750H, that's a 45 watt long-term PL1 power limit. Our GS66 was configured to use a huge 135 watt short-term PL2 out of the box. However, in practice, I didn't see the CPU go over 70 watts very often. Still, this is a bit higher than the 56 to 60 watts that we normally saw with the 9750H systems. The reason why we use stock settings and similar power limits is so we can compare processor performance at a given power level. Unlike with desktops, power consumption is crucial in laptops. More power-hungry parts require larger coolers and therefore larger laptops. Comparing chips on an equivalent power level allows us to see how they would perform in an equivalent type of design. The more a CPU can do within a certain power limit, the more efficient it is, and the more you can do with a smaller and lighter design. This is naturally one of the many challenges with laptop testing. It's quite hard to get apples to apples comparisons given the differences in configurations, so we try our best to put everything on an even playing field. The following performance charts contain averages from equivalent hardware configurations to provide a generalized look at performance from a given CPU, and you can see the full list of laptops that we tested in the description. And another quick note here on undervolting before we begin. Like we said in our Core i7-10875H review, many more OEMs are locking down undervolting this generation, likely to prevent against plundervolt exploits. This was the case on the MSI GS66 Stealth. You can re-enable undervolting through the advanced options in MSI's BIOS, but unless you know the quite frankly ridiculous keyboard combination to access the advanced BIOS, and you can check Jared's text video for more information, you'll have undervolting locked away by default. Let's start the performance benchmarks with a look at Cinebench R20, a favorite of everyone out there, but a benchmark that Intel thinks is pretty irrelevant. The Core i7-10750H isn't providing much of an improvement over the Core i7-9750H here when we are looking at default 45 watt power limits. In multi-thread, the new 10th gen part is less than 2% faster, so margin of error type stuff, while in single thread we're seeing just a 3% performance increase. And it's not much better compared to the 8750H, 4% faster in the multi-thread test. Admittedly, it is 12% faster in the single thread test thanks to a clock speed increase from a maximum of 4.1 GHz to 4.8-ish GHz. In both tests, it's easily beaten by the higher tier Core i7-10875H with 8 cores, but it's crushed as well by the Ryzen 7 4800H, which sits in a similar tier. The Ryzen processor is not only over 60% faster in multi-thread, it also holds a 7% lead in single core. Not a lot is different in Cinebench R15. On this occasion, the 10750H is actually slower on average in the multi-thread test compared to the 9750H, but it still holds a lead in single thread. All of these margins are single-digit type stuff, so not a lot to get excited about here. In a longer-term workload like Handbrake, we really don't see much of an improvement comparing the 10750H to the 9750H. Just a 2% difference here, which, let's be honest, depending on the exact laptop you have, could go either way. Ryzen here holds an absolutely outrageous lead over Intel's most popular Core i7, finishing this X265 transcode more than 50% faster. Blender delivers almost identical results to Handbrake in terms of the margin between Intel's current and last generation 6-core processors. You just aren't gaining anything substantial from this move. I mean, this isn't a surprise, it's basically the same silicon, but when you put real-world benchmark numbers to it, it really starts to sink in a bit more. Code compilation was one of the best results I've seen for the 10750H. In this GCC compilation, which is a mixture of single and multi-threaded sections, the 10750H ended up 10% ahead of the 9750H, a combination of higher boost and clock speeds in some situations. However, it still easily loses to the Ryzen 7 4800H, which is faster for both multi and lightly threaded workloads in most cases. Microsoft Excel was a workload where the 10750H ended up a little behind the 9750H on average out of the laptops that I've tested. A few variances in boost behavior will be causing this. As Excel is mostly multi-threaded, performance falls behind both the 8-core options by double-digit margins. In PC Mark X's lighter workloads, the slight single-thread performance improvement does help out in some situations. We're looking at equivalent performance in the productivity test to the 9750H, although it remains around 10% behind both the 10875H and 4800H here. In the Essentials test, that clock speed bump helps deliver 3% better performance, but again, it falls behind Intel's faster 8-core model and the new Ryzen 7 from AMD. 7-Zip shows performance to be very similar between the 10750H, 9750H, and 8750H. Not much in it here. Again, as this test is multi-threaded, performance is a bit behind Intel's 8-core 10875H, actually quite a bit behind given it's 25% slower, and it's also behind AMD's Ryzen 7 4800H. Ryzen holds a significant lead here for decompression in particular. The 4800H is a huge 77% faster than the 10750H. MATLAB shows no real performance gain for the 10750H over the 9750H, and similar to other tests we've just been looking at, it's slower than 8-core CPU options by a double-digit margin. Given the Ryzen 7 results, 6 cores at this price point is looking a bit dated. One of the more significant victories for the 10750H is in Acrobat PDF exporting, which is a fully single-threaded workload with clock speeds 7% higher with the 10750H over the 9750H, and both CPUs being able to run at these clocks within the power limit on a single core. The 10750H was 7% faster in this test. This allows it to claim one of the only performance leads over the Ryzen 7 4800H that I saw. In AES performance, again, we're not seeing much difference between the 9750H and 10750H, or even to the 10875H. That's because this is a hardware accelerated function, and it doesn't seem like there's been any gains here at all, probably as the architecture is the same. Cryptography is another area where Ryzen is much faster in laptops, 35% faster when multi-threaded. Photoshop is one of those rare workloads where the needle did shift marginally in favor of the new 10th gen CPUs. In Puget's benchmark, we're seeing 9% higher performance with the same RTX 2060 GPU. This allows it to match the Ryzen 7 4800H configuration with a lower tier GTX 1660 Ti, which on face value is reasonable, I guess, until you realize it is outperformed by a cheaper Ryzen configuration. DaVinci Resolve Studio using the Puget workload is another rare instance where our Core i7 10750H configuration was slower than our Core i7 9750H system with the same RTX 2060 GPU. It wasn't massively slower, but it was slower overall, which is an odd result. Nevertheless, both CPU options fell behind the Ryzen 7 4800H, which is typical of video encoding applications. And finally, we get to our set of Premiere workloads. For exporting, there's no real difference between the 10750H and 9750H when paired with the same GPU. You're looking at margin of error type stuff using the latest Premiere beta version, which adds hardware acceleration for NVIDIA GPUs. Like with DaVinci Resolve, the Ryzen 7 4800H is a better choice here as it can chew through the CPU limited parts of the encode faster. Live playback performance is also quite similar between most of these options. The Ryzen 7 4800H is marginally ahead, but not by much. If you like us and stick to purely software encoding for maximum quality, again, not much to be gained between the 10750H and 9750H. We saw a 6% improvement here, which is actually on the higher side, but with 25% lower performance than a Ryzen 7 4800H configuration, just doesn't end up being that impressive overall. And finally, we have the warp stabilizer effect, which is lightly threaded, no performance gains over the Core i7 9750H, and like we've been talking about in seemingly every single benchmark throughout this video, it just can't keep up with the Ryzen 7 4800H in this test. When running a single warp stabilizer instance, the 4800H was 22% faster. The main reason why we aren't getting better performance with this generation is the simple fact that Intel have not changed the architecture or manufacturing tech for years. When there are no IPC gains to be had and minimal improvements to efficiency, you're stuck with virtually zero performance gains in a power-limited form factor like a laptop, and this is most obvious when viewing clock speeds. In Cinebench R20, the 10750H performs almost exactly like a Core i7 9750H, which itself performs like a Core i7 8750H. Those last two generation processors clocked around 3.1 GHz long-term across 6 cores within the 45 watt power limit. The 10750H ends up clocking around 3.2 GHz long-term, so a 100 MHz increase in this instance. With that equating to a 3% clock speed gain, it's no surprise we often saw multi-core performance improvements in the 2 to 3% range, which is negligible. And I don't really want to harp on too much about these marginal gains because you've just sat through many minutes of me describing low single-digit improvements when putting the Core i7 10750H up against the Core i7 9750H, but here's the overall performance summary. In the best cases, we're seeing a 10% gain in more lightly or single-threaded apps, but this does vary depending on the test, and for the most case, I'd say we're not seeing much of an improvement at all. And this carries through to looking at limited 8750H testing. Multi-core performance is only improved by a few percent in Cinebench. The major gains have come from raising the clock speed limit for single core. Compared to Intel's other main Core i7 CPU, which offers 8 cores, the Core i7 10875H, the 10750H is universally slower as expected. At times, it's around 10% slower in single-thread workloads, but can be up around 20 to 25% slower in multi-thread. Given most higher-end 10750H laptops do have a more expensive 10875H option, or even something with the Core i9 10980HK, this is the sort of performance you're missing out on. And then comparing the Core i7 10750H to the Ryzen 7 4800H, it's a bit of a bloodbath for the Intel processor. With both CPUs limited to 45 watts, AMD's Ryzen CPU is offering better multi-core performance and better single-core performance in almost every instance. If you have productivity workloads that are mostly multi-core, the performance benefit Ryzen provides with 8 Zen 2 cores on 7nm is very significant. Often the Ryzen option is over 50% faster. And while in some instances with the Core i7 10875H you could justify going with the Intel option over the Ryzen option due to its higher single-thread performance, that's not really the case with the 10750H due to its lower single-core clock speeds. The Ryzen option is faster in most instances with single-thread, so that advantage is kind of not really here with this Core i7 processor. I think my overall thoughts on the Core i7 10750H can be summarized quite neatly in a single word, and that word is unimpressive. Intel are basically just offering us the same performance as the last generation Core i7-9750H here, with a few very small improvements, which in effect is the same performance as the Core i7-8750H from 2 generations ago. For productivity performance, there is no reason to consider an upgrade from Intel's 2-year-old Core i7 line to something 10th gen with the same core count. The gains just aren't significant enough. The only way you'll be getting more performance with this Intel to Intel upgrade is if you buy a laptop that allows you to run the CPU with a higher power limit. If you had a 45-watt laptop and can upgrade to something with enough cooling to allow 60 or 70 watts, yeah, you'll be facing a 15 to 20% improvement. But this isn't an actual performance gain from the 10th gen CPU. It's a performance gain from having a better laptop with a better cooler. Had you bought a high quality 8750H laptop to begin with that could handle a higher power limit, whether via an OEM utility or XTU, the jump to 10th gen is still virtually zero. It could even be a performance downgrade if you end up with a worse cooler. Because Intel are still offering 2-year-old performance at the same price point, AMD have been able to swoop in and shake up the laptop market with a much faster processor in this category. The Ryzen 7 4800H is, for the most part, double-digit percentages faster with the same power usage, and this lead can be 50% or higher when fed a workload that can utilize all of its 8 cores. There's really no doubt about it, Ryzen 4000 APUs can do more with the same resources as an Intel laptop. This conversation does get a bit muddled when you factor in all the various power limits and configurations that OEMs offer, but given that we've seen Intel still failing to beat AMD's 45-watt processor with a 90-watt 8-core option, laptops that let you run the i7-10750H at higher power limits will only close the margin somewhat, not reduce it to zero. And that's with all the drawbacks of higher temperatures, larger coolers, noisier fans, or a combination of everything. The apparent reality this generation is that any laptop using an Intel Core i7-10750H would most likely be faster and better for productivity or creator workloads had it used a Ryzen 7 4800H instead. Even with this MSI GS66 Stealth, and I'll be honest, it's a very nice laptop, it kind of stings having it sit here with a 6-core CPU inside when I know it'd be faster with the 4800H. It's such a great design, other components are solid, it's very portable, nice display, yet it's missing out on the 50% performance bump from Ryzen. Or to look at it another way, in the portable H series category, the MSI GS66 is easily beaten in terms of productivity performance by the smaller, cheaper Asus Zephyrus G14. The G14 is $300 cheaper, a 14-inch design instead of 15 inches, and weighs 500 grams less. That's the real-world benefit AMD is providing right now, albeit in a limited number of systems. Intel offering near zero performance gains the last 2 years just isn't going to cut it here anymore, and judging by the feedback and interest in AMD laptops, I think it's time for OEMs to get on board as well. That's it for this review of the Core i7-10750H, not the best product name I've ever seen, let's be honest, but hopefully you've got all the performance information that you need comparing it to 9th gen, 8th gen, and the latest Ryzen 4000 options so that you have, the information that you need for buying a next generation laptop if you're interested. As always, you can subscribe for more laptop testing that will be coming out on the channel soon. Very excited to get into some more of the Ryzen laptops, in particular U-Series, 4600H, all that sort of thing. Fingers crossed we'll be able to get those laptops in soon. It's been, yeah, bit of a hard process these days to get these sorts of things in, but trying our best here. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. We also have the Patreon page if you're interested to sign up, get some of our perks like monthly live streams, Discord chat, all that sort of thing. Check that out. Links in the description below. And I'll catch you in the next one.